What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the MMA Junkie preview show. I am your host, Farah Hannoun, and today we're going to take a deep dive at UFC 313, headlined by Alex Pereira, taking on Magomed Ankalaev, and I'm joined by Lemos MMA podcast host, Danny Segura. What's up, Danny?
What's up, Farah? How's it going?
I'm doing good, thank you. We've lost two fights. News just broke a couple of, or less than an hour ago. No more Blades and Kuniev, and Chris Gutierrez and John Castaneda. So I believe we're going to be looking at a later start, not until 7:30 p.m. Eastern. But I think it's okay without these two fights. I mean, it was a weird fight for Curtis Blades anyway, right? He admitted that he had to Google Kuniev, didn't know who he was. I was very surprised by that matchmaking.
Yeah, it's crazy. From fighting for an interim belt, right? The heavyweight interim belt to the prelims. And a guy that's, a newcomer. Yeah, pretty wild jump for Curtis Blades, but somewhat expected, right, given his relationship with the UFC and some of his history. But, I don't think if we were to lose two fights, I think these were the ones to lose. Maybe not the Chris Gutierrez and Castaneda one. That one I was kind of excited for, but at least two prelims fight, we didn't lose anything from the main card.
Yeah, and the thing is, when we lose fights, it just means we start later, right? It doesn't mean we get an earlier night, so that's why it doesn't really matter for me at the end of the day.
6.
Right. I know. It's okay, but it's still a really good card, a fun one. I don't know. We don't get pay-per-view buys disclosed that often anymore, if anything. So that's why for me, sometimes I look at a card and I'm kind of interested to gauge the star power of Alex Pereira, the star power of the likes of Sean O'Malley, but we don't get those answers, do we?
No, we don't. So, and that's funny. I get asked that question every now and then, and it used to be a big topic of conversation when those numbers were reported, because we could really gauge about how the UFC, if the UFC had a good year or not, or how the UFC is doing from quarter to quarter, and who is moving the needle. Now it's really hard to tell. I mean, we can kind of gauge it from some of the traffic over at MMA Junkie, but even that's still not obviously 100% accurate, just because there's interest online doesn't really translate into actually people dishing out their money and paying. So it's a lost start. It's a lost conversation. Very sad one, because I really do think that, like, with that information in the industry, I think it helps the fighters, and I think it makes the MMA world a lot more interesting to talk about.
And yeah, look, one of the narratives going into this fight week is Alex Pereira the face of the UFC? And he said, I believe so, which I don't think he's being cocky by saying that. I think it's a pretty fair statement. What about you? Do you believe he's the face of the UFC right now?
At this point, yeah, he's sort of the hottest name, the one that's active and the one that's relevant sporting-wise. John Jones is not really all that active. And his wins, at least the last one, wasn't so relevant, even though he's UFC heavyweight champion. And Conor McGregor might be a bigger name. More people might know of Conor McGregor, but he's not fighting and he's not really relevant anymore in the sport. So, yeah, I think if you had to make a poster of like this era of the UFC, I think Alex Pereira would be right in front.
Yeah, so when I think about kind of the biggest stars right now, the UFC, obviously John Jones and Conor McGregor are still active. Well, technically still active, Conor McGregor.
Well, no,
but outside of
McGregor's not active.
McGregor's not active, right?
He's not active.
Outside of those two, I think Alex Pereira, I think Ilia Topuria, I think Islam Makhachev, maybe Sean O'Malley, if we had to make a little Mount Rushmore of the current stars of the UFC. Am I missing somebody? Probably.
Maybe Hamzat, right? Like, I know he's not that very active, but like he's definitely one of the guys that like a lot of casuals recognize and has built up a lot of hype for himself. So him and
Drake is getting there. Drake is slowly getting there, maybe.
Yeah.
No. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, regardless, Alex Pereira, we can agree that he is one of the bigger stars. Yeah, that's the guy. And he defends his title against Magomed Ankalaev in Ramadan. Ankalaev, he's done a lot of media, and one of the things that he said, the headline that I liked was that he pleaded with the UFC to kind of get this moved after Ramadan. We all know that he isn't really going to get his way. But what do you kind of make of this fight taking place in Ramadan? Because a lot of people were calling for Ankalaev to get a title fight from before, right?
Yeah, out of like the Muslim fighters that have fought for a title in Umar, for the UFC, obviously, Umar, Islam, Khabib,
Bilal.
Magomed Ankalaev, Bilal. It's funny that Ankalaev and Bilal have been the only ones that have fought in Ramadan, right? And I think there's a common thread between them. They're not stars, at least at this moment. Bilal obviously became champion, but those are guys that the UFC gave them title shots reluctantly. They didn't want to give them title shots, right? They skipped them time and time and again until they became undeniable. And that's what's happening here with Ankalaev. But just because you become undeniable, that doesn't mean you get things your way, or that doesn't mean you get things at least in an even playing field. So I do think he's entering big time on a disadvantage here. I mean, from what I understand, and I know not a whole lot about the Muslim religion, to be quite honest, nor Ramadan, but the big key factor here is that you cannot eat or drink, which is the big part, while the sun is out, right? It's got to be sundown. So, yeah, I mean, that affects weight cutting, that affects training, and even just the stress of like, am I properly hydrated? Am I properly have the right nutrition? You know, like all those things. So he really has the deck stacked against him, and it's no surprise. I mean, he should have gotten a title shot in 2024, and he didn't. He got skipped over by multiple people behind him, but he's finally getting his due. It sucks that it's under these circumstances, but we know how the UFC rolls.
Yeah, and look, I can personally say fasting isn't fun, but there's a difference between fasting. Like I work out when I fast, but there's a difference between trying to cut weight, contact, than just working out, right? So I think here with Magomed Ankalaev, he's opted not to fast during fight week to help his weight cut. A lot of judgment I'm seeing online, whether it be from the Muslim community or others.
Seeing a lot of judgment?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of judgment. I think it's unfair because I'm wondering what this is all doing to Magomed Ankalaev. Must be fueling him and angering him, just seeing like him. He doesn't even want to be in this particular situation. Like he finally gets another opportunity to title his fight with Jan Blachowicz. Obviously, he felt like he won that fight. UFC decided to move a completely different direction, like ditch both of them from the title picture. So all that kind of pent up anger and angst for Ankalaev, do you think that could positively impact his performance or negatively? How do you see that impacting him in general?
I think I think he can still win, but I think his performance will be negatively impacted. I mean, you can't really be optimal under those circumstances. And I want to ask you, because I again, I don't know a whole lot. Do people, how often or how common is it for Muslims to opt out from the fasting? Is it something that with athletes and stuff in other sports, I don't know, in basketball or other sports, have we seen that before?
I mean, they usually, but like I said, they usually choose to fast. Like we've seen that in football. Like there was a clip that Man United posted, I think, of Mazraoui, who's a Moroccan player. They gave him his opportunity to break his fast. It's not ideal, obviously, to work out and be drenched and exhausted and stuff while you're fasting. But like I said, this is like fighting is different. That's what I tell everybody. Like I can play basketball.
I'm saying, like, has there been other like high profile athletes before in the past that have gone through something similar? And
I'm not sure, because I feel it's a matter of like those who opted not to fast maybe don't fast in general, as opposed to they normally fast but decided not to fast for this particular game. I don't have any like particular scenario in my head, but Hakeem Olajuwon used to fast during like the basketball, the NBA games and stuff. But this is a weight cut. I think that was Magomed Ankalaev's issue, because the fight itself, he wouldn't be fasting. Like it will be past. He'll break his fast before he makes the walk to the octagon.
Right.
So Ankalaev won't be fasting. For those who are probably going to comment with him drinking in between rounds, he'll be allowed to eat. But the idea was for him, he opted because of the weight cut. And obviously he needs to stay hydrated in certain amounts of time to make sure he makes weight. And let's be real, if he didn't end up hitting 205 on the scale, everyone would have gone crazy on him, right? So it's a sucky situation for him. I'm not going to lie. Like it's just... he knows how big this opportunity is. And like you said, like you alluded to earlier about him having to take a long road to get to a title fight, he knows this could be his last shot.
Last title shot.
Yeah. And nothing to do with ability and everything, but just the road. The road to it.
Same thing with Bilal Muhammad. Like we knew that was his only crack at the belt, and he had to make the most of it. And I think clearly we see that Magomed is very devoted to his religion, and if he didn't really want this bad, I don't think he would have done what he did in terms of opting out from the fasting and stuff this week.
Yeah, I just think people need to chill from judgment. Either way, you shouldn't judge others, period, to each their own. But I think it's been a little bit heavy on him throughout fight weeks. I see the comments and it's like, but guys, just chill out. Like you're not in his shoes. You don't know what he's going through. But nonetheless, he hits the scale. He makes weight. We have a fight. Stylistically, like a lot of people, like Magomed Ankalaev seems to believe this notion that Pereira has been protected. Daniel Cormier called him kind of the golden goose of the UFC. Do you also believe that? Do you believe that, UFC's kind of been trying to protect Alex? Yeah.
100%. There's no doubt about that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like they do that to all their high profile stars. And it's not like he's been completely protected, right? Like the UFC will try to accommodate the schedules and other things to their big stars as much as possible. But at the end of the day, if like you suck at fighting, you're not going to hang around for too long. Like you still have to deliver results. Like you still have to do very difficult things. Fighting Jan Blachowicz, he's got wrestling like that. That's very difficult. Obviously, outside of Blachowicz, the rest of the matchups have really been against strikers, which have obviously favored him. But yeah, like they have accommodated things. I think they've given him enough time over 2024 to really become as much of a mixed martial artist as he can possibly become, and that's by giving him strikers and letting him sort of get even more accustomed to fighting in MMA. But at some point, like if the number one contender keeps being the number one contender, like the UFC, even though they sometimes delay things, and that is sort of against a lot of the purists of the sport, but they eventually get to it, right? Like if you're undefeated and you keep kicking ass, like you eventually get your due, right? And that's what's happening here with Ankalaev. And this is the real test. Like if and I've said this before, I said this on Lemos MMA in Spanish. If Pereira is able to get past Ankalaev, which I think is the biggest test he's ever faced in the UFC and in his entire MMA career, I think we're guaranteed, and that's if he sticks around, obviously, and I'm guessing we'll get into that in a bit. But if he sticks around 205, we're easily guaranteed 2 more title defenses. Like there's nobody right now in the top 5 that can beat him.
And look, one interesting thing that Ankalaev said, he said, if I beat him, I'll give him an immediate rematch. Now, we saw how when Merab dethroned Sean O'Malley, seems like Sean O'Malley's going to get his immediate rematch, which to me, like, I get what the UFC is trying to do. Like, we saw it when TJ beat Cody, and then Cody ended up getting it. Like, it's not always, like, immediate rematches aren't always warranted, right? So do you see a scenario there if Ankalaev wins that the UFC is going to want to pair them up? Or do you think Pereira goes, okay, I'm done with light heavyweight. But the lure won't be there, right? If he loses, trying to get a big heavyweight fight, that's not really going to work, is it?
Yeah, no, I think he sticks around. If he loses, he sticks around for that immediate rematch. If he wins, I think there's a good chance we might not see him again at 205, and he'll finish out his career at heavyweight, where the bigger fights are. But yeah, I mean, what other fight are you going to make? Like Olberg versus Ankalaev, Blachowicz versus Ankalaev? I don't think the UFC is going to book that one. Keep in mind, like some of the fallout that we witnessed from the first time they fought. So that's really the only options, and because those two are fighting sort of for the number one contender spot. So yeah, I mean, the UFC is in the business of making big fights, and at light heavyweight, the biggest fights available right now have to include Alex Pereira. So if they can put him in an immediate rematch, they will. And honestly, I don't think a lot of fans will complain. Fans love this guy, and I think a lot of them are willing to ignore and have sort of a blind eye on that side of things. Whereas we've seen in similar situations, there's been more of a uproar in the fan base for the UFC making either an immediate rematch or not giving the champion its right contender, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, like anything that's pro Alex Pereira, people will be all in for it. So yeah, if he loses, there will be an immediate rematch. That I'm confident of.
And yeah, and looking at the landscape of 205, I mean, Yuri's had 2 recent cracks at it. Jamal Hill's coming off of a loss to Yuri. Like you said, I mean, maybe if Olberg goes out there and like starches Jan Blachowicz right away, maybe that's the only person I can see like in the title picture. But like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if they went the direction of an immediate rematch. Now, looking at the odds, according to BetMGM, Ankalaev did open up as a favorite. The odds have swayed all the way until today, with Pereira being a slight favorite, slight minus 120 favorite over Ankalaev, who's plus 100. Were you surprised that Ankalaev opened up as a favorite, and you're surprised to see the odds now in favor of Pereira?
No. I think that Ankalaev opening up as the favorite was sort of what I expected. I mean, he is the better mixed martial artist. Will that transition into him winning into a positive result? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see tonight. But certainly that makes sense. And obviously, taking Pereira plus money, and he's only lost once in the UFC, like you got to bet on him. Plus, it's Shama. Like people are going to be watching. People want to support him. People almost feel like sometimes betting is a way of supporting, even though it obviously has nothing to do with the result. But no, I'm not surprised at all by this movement.
And yeah, because the whole question leading up to this fight is if Ankalaev uses wrestling. But we do that with a lot of matchups, right? I find myself doing that with, we'll talk about this later on, Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev, with a lot of fighters that have wrestling in their skill set, but have never really implemented it too much offensively. Now, Ankalaev has in certain fights, but the way he was kind of promoting this fight was that I'll stand and trade with him. But as the weeks went on, as we got closer to the fights, he kind of changed his tune. A lot of pundits, a lot of fighters that kind of do their breakdowns, the Robert Whitakers and whatnot, they seem to believe
everyone under the sun.
Yeah. But they seem to think that not only does Ankalaev need to wrestle, but he needs to do it right away. Ankalaev can strike, but is that the way you look at it as well? Like he needs to go out there and shoot right away at Pereira?
Hell yeah. I mean, we saw him getting mauled by low kicks from Jan Blachowicz.
Yes,
and don't get me wrong, the Polish power kicks pretty damn hard, but there's a clear difference in power and in technique between Blachowicz and Alex Pereira. So he could only take 50% of whatever, how many kicks he took against Blachowicz, he can only take 50% of those against Pereira. So yeah, like he's gonna have to like wrestle him like right off the start. At least that's the smartest thing, because we know like once 1, 2, 3 leg kicks start adding up, your takedown attempts, your ability to shoot will be a lot slower. You won't have as much power. You won't be as sturdy. Like your wrestling, it's not even like, oh, I'm getting my ass kicked into striking third round. Let me try my wrestling. Your wrestling might be gone by then. You won't be able to utilize it if your legs are completely just destroyed. So yeah, like the smart thing is to like wrestle right off the bat. But will he do it? I think that's the biggest question. We've seen him underutilize his wrestling many times throughout the UFC. Throughout his UFC run. And I do feel like after that Blachowicz fight, I did see a change in Ankalaev, both outside of the cage and inside of the cage, in wanting to kind of put on a show, in wanting to kind of sway away from being smart or being himself, just because he knows that like he's not selling, he's not getting the opportunities because he's not in favor of the promotion. So even the whole Johnny Walker thing where they were about to fight each other after the fight was over or something like that, like even that seemed very out of character. So yeah, like we'll see what happens, but yeah, like if he wants to win tonight, if he wants to take home the UFC light heavyweight belt, he's gonna have to wrestle. There's no doubt about that. There's no going around that.
And look, his top control is very good. 0 submissions to his name, so he doesn't really attack too much. But that's part of having the good control, right? Because sometimes when you attack for submissions, you give up position. And because I'm not saying he's not incapable of it, but he just seems to be content with the top control, which would be a good idea against an Alex Pereira because you want to drain him, right? Over the 5 rounds, the notion is as the fight goes further, Pereira was probably going to get tired. But look, he finished Khalil Roundtree late, but there was no grappling there. So for Magomed Ankalaev, if he's not able to get Pereira down to the ground, do you see this being kind of like an early night for Alex Pereira? Or, I mean, we've seen how comfortable Pereira is on the feet, right? He was kind of downloading the information with Khalil Roundtree and just eventually figured him out and finished them. But another southpaw here in Ankalaev. So how do you see the striking exchanges go? Do you feel like it's like heavily in favor of Alex Pereira, or what kind of weapons do you see Ankalaev potentially using that could help him, whether in the clinch or?
Yeah, I mean, clearly Pereira is the better striker by a million miles. But the difference here is that I do think that Ankalaev can really close the gap where he do mix in his takedowns and his wrestling and tie him up against the cage and do that kind of thing. Because all of a sudden Pereira has something to worry about, and we know that you only have a certain amount of attention, and if that's split in defending different things outside of striking, that can open things up. I mean, we always kind of list that like big old right hand that Khabib landed on McGregor and knocked him down. Look, if it was a straight up striking match, that would have never happened. But because of the wrestling takedown, McGregor had to be aware of those things, taking attention away from his striking defense. So if he is able to wrestle and implement certain things, I do believe that on the feet it could be a lot closer than what people think. But even then, I do think that he'll be at a big disadvantage striking wise. And that's why I think it is absolutely crucial for him to close the distance, clinch him, put him up against the cage, or straight up just take him down. Because standing with Alex Pereira, it is not a good idea. How many elite strikers have we seen just getting knocked out, right? Like Strickland, Adesanya. I don't know if you want to throw Jiri Prochazka in there if you consider him elite, but certainly at least a dangerous striker. Jamal Hill, the list goes on. So, yeah, I don't think that Ankalaev's way better than those guys at striking. So I wouldn't fancy his chances on the feet, solely on the feet.
Let's look at some of the individual odds here, courtesy of BetMGM. So we got plus 150 Pereira by knockout, which seems very tempting, I assume.
I mean, you're telling me that Alex Pereira to win by knockout, to finish somebody, to take the lights out someone, it's plus money. I don't care if it's against King Kong. Like, whenever Pereira is plus money for scoring a knockout, you take it, because it's just such an obvious money line. So I think that's a big one right there.
Yeah, for me, like, I picked Ankalaev ultimately, but I see it kind of like that's me assuming he's going to mix in his grappling, maybe, you know, get hurt on the feet a little bit. But if he's able to implement a full grappling game plan over the course of 5 rounds, if his cardio holds up, if he's able not to take too much damage. So Ankalaev by decision would be plus, what are we looking at? Plus 275. So yeah, it seems like the two methods of victory
by decision at plus 275. I would feel comfortable putting some money on that, like if it was plus 1,000, plus 800, but a plus 275, hell no. Okay. I'm not getting near that.
But I mean, I'm assuming, are you picking Pereira? Is that your pick?
I'm picking Pereira. Yeah, I mean, the guy. People need to keep this in mind. Like, the guy has been training for years with Glover Teixeira, who in my opinion is one of the most underrated grapplers, MMA grapplers of all time. I mean, that guy has brilliant takedowns. His passing is great. Top control, solid submissions. His ground and pound is nasty. I would say that he's one of the most versatile guys on the ground, on top. He's got passing. He's got control. He's got ground and pound. He's got submissions. He's got it all. So, like, training with him, like, for years, I do think that it eventually is going to add up. Does that mean he's going to have like a crazy ground game? No. But I think if he can survive a few rounds with Teixeira on top of him, I think he could do the same with Ankalaev. So, I don't know where I was going with this, but yes, I'm picking Pereira, and like, the dude just is a knockout machine. Like, if that is plus money, I think that is insane. Like, you obviously have to go for it.
Yeah, look, Pereira's become one of those guys where it's kind of hard to bet against. I know that's weird for me to say that because I just picked Ankalaev, but I'm saying in general, like, I think he's reached a point in his career, despite his overall skill set not necessarily being the most well-rounded out of today's kind of stars or champions, but the way he's like delivered time and time again, I wouldn't blame anybody to kind of bet on him or put money on him. With a win here, do you think 100% he goes up to heavyweight? Because we talked about nothing really being left for him at light heavyweight, right?
Yeah, there's nothing left for him at light heavyweight. Like, who is he going to fight? There's just absolutely nobody. The only thing I can maybe see that interests him is if UFC grants Dricus du Plessis an opportunity to move up to 205, because now it's a champion versus champion fight. I think there seems to be a little bit of a dislike between Pereira and du Plessis, although nothing has been very vocal. But I think there's been a few interactions that we've seen surface online that kind of indicate that. And obviously he was in the corner of Sean Strickland when he fought du Plessis. So I think that could maybe force him or push him to like stick around at 205, especially if the UFC has interest in having him at 205. I can see them like offering a good opportunity like that, plus dishing out a little bit more money. But outside of that, like, he's cleaned out 205. Like, I don't think beating anybody else, say a Carlos Ulberg or anyone else, and with all the respect in the world to those guys, but I don't think it's going to add much to his legacy. I don't think it's going to really add much to his career. And if we look at, like, historically speaking, like the fighters that have had sort of a opportunity to become a 3-way champion, like in 3 different divisions, you have to put Alex Pereira as the best candidate available, right? Like even against Ankalaev, like we've seen him against the face-off, and Ankalaev is a big dude. He looks much bigger than him. How do you make 185? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But like the guy fighting, and look, I interviewed him here in Miami when his sister was going to fight a karate combat, and the dude's massive. The dude's huge. And, you know, I go to American Top Team, Killcliff, and I sometimes interview these heavyweights. He looks just as big. So, you know, just knowing that he has that opportunity to become a three-way champion, and honestly, that might even close out the conversation of the GOAT. Like, I'm sorry, Jon Jones, but like winning 3 different belts, I know he doesn't have as much time in MMA, but like, there's definitely a conversation there to have. So I do think that heavyweight is inevitable. That's where the big fights are. That's where the money's at. So if it's not next fight because Dricus du Plessis goes up to light heavyweight, it's going to be the one after that. But certainly a heavyweight move is due. And with a win, I think it's very likely that it comes after Saturday.
So you're saying he if he were to win a 3rd title, GOAT, like #1, greatest of all time ever?
If you were to win a heavyweight title, especially if it's against Jon Jones, let's say they skip over Aspinall, I think the conversation gets very difficult. I would have to, a lot of it depends how like it comes across, right? Like, how does he do it? What do you feel in that exact moment? But like to say that like that's not a possibility, I think that'd be crazy. Like 3-division UFC champion, middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight. Jon Jones, Adesanya, Strickland, Jan Blachowicz, Gilbert Chaska, Jamal Hill. Like the list, there's so many former and current champions that he's beaten. Like it's ridiculous. So yeah, like I do think there will be there should be a good faith, good spirited conversation around that, because I think it's worth having if that were to happen.
So if you were to insert him, so you'd insert him in a Mount Rushmore at least of GOATs, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, through a UFC champion, hell yeah. Like,
so who would you kind of take out? Who was your top 4? I'm assuming if it's Jones, Anderson, DJ, GSP, maybe? Are those your 4?
Yes.
So
yeah.
who would you kind of
probably Anderson? I'm sorry to the Spider, but probably him. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And we talk about heavyweight. Do you think the UFC would put Aspinall to the side and go ahead with Pereira and Jones? I will admit that's a bigger fight. I think that's like, I'll argue with anyone there. I love Tom Aspinall and everything, but I mean, Jon Jones, right after he beat Stipe, is like, I need FU money to consider Aspinall. I don't think he would have necessarily been saying that about Pereira. I think he would have been down right away to book that. So do you think the UFC would go that direction? They do tend to try to do those things, right?
It wouldn't surprise me one bit. I'll say that. Like, what's the bigger fight? What will sell the most? And we know the UFC is very pro money, right? I mean, we just saw like a freaking conference call with, what was it? Ari Emanuel or somebody from like the higher ups of the UFC saying you can't really tell the difference between the mighty Apex and an arena. And that could be a potential cost-cutting measure, as obviously they own that and they don't have to pay the arena. So, the UFC loves money, and I love Tom Aspinall, but like there is no denying that the biggest money fight available, or the biggest money fight that you can make now, is Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira, especially if he knocks out Ankalaev real quick and he's able to stuff a few takedowns to kind of insert some doubt that maybe Jon Jones won't be able to do the same. Holy shit, like all of a sudden, light heavyweight champion versus heavyweight champion, that would be massive. That'd be massive. Would I like to see it? Yes, in a vacuum, but in totality, no, because I don't want Tom Aspinall to get screwed over, because I am a purist. I am a hardcore. I've been following the sport since the early 2000s. And look, we got a defending interim champion. Like, there's no more deserving guy of that opportunity against Jon Jones than Tom Aspinall. So I personally wouldn't like to see it. But would it surprise me if the UFC went that route? Not at all. Would it almost even make sense? Yes, of course. They could offer Tom Aspinall money to sit out. I mean, they could do a million things, but also don't think it's a coincidence that I spoke to Dana White, what was it, in December of last year at UFC Tampa, and I asked him that question that made a lot of headlines, where I was like, how confident are you that Jon Jones versus Aspinall happens? He's like, pretty confident. I'm like, do you guarantee it? Would you say 100% it happens in 2025? And he said, yes, I guarantee it 100%. And all of a sudden, we are in March. We saw that video from Tom Aspinall saying that like the negotiations have sort of been difficult on Jon Jones' side. This result right here tonight in the main event of UFC 313 obviously has an impact and is obviously in consideration and a part of a piece of the puzzle of this whole heavyweight thing going on at the very top. Like, you'd be a fool if you don't think that way. Now, I hope it doesn't get to that way, but like, you know, money talks and yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
So you think Jones fights regardless, right? Like one more regardless for Jon Jones. Maybe it's a matter of waiting for this. Yeah, because I was kind of skeptical in the beginning, but now I'm starting to feel like he will fight regardless and perhaps wait for the result of this fight. If Pereira loses, it's like, right, let's get the negotiations rolling with Aspinall. If Pereira wins, that's when I guess he starts to ask for more or maybe tries to go the direction of Alex Pereira. But regardless, for Pereira, win or lose, seems like an immediate rematch is on the table or big things at heavyweight. Yeah. Let's move on to the co-main event. Originally supposed to be Justin Gaethje and Dan Hooker. Hooker ends up fracturing his hand, undergoing surgery. We get Rafael Fiziev. I just spoke to Beneil Dariush. He told me that they did call him, but said, you know, Gaethje's a friend and weight would have been impossible to make. Renato Moicano revealed UFC called him too. Seems like the UFC were trying other options, but Fiziev was the only one. Now, stylistically, it's a really fun matchup, but what's your kind of excitement level considering that we just saw it at UFC 286, I believe, which was March 2023?
Sorry, repeat that again. Sorry, I was...
Yeah. No, I was saying, what's kind of your like excitement level in terms of this matchup? Like we just saw it at UFC 286, March 2023, super close. Some people felt like Fiziev should have gotten his hand raised, but does it excite you that we ended up with this matchup again?
No, not really. I think out of all the options available, this was sort of the least exciting one. More on Fiziev's side because we just haven't seen him in a while, and in his last two performances, he hasn't really been able to pick up a win, so he's kind of lost some relevancy at 155. But it's still not a bad fight. I would have loved to see the Dan Hooker one. Obviously, that wasn't available because he got injured, but I think that fight was amazing. That was just a great booking, and I hope it happens down the line. But yeah, this is a fine fight. Like in terms of a replacement, like at least they didn't bring like a newcomer or something like that. Like this is a fine fight. That's all I can say. I'm not overly excited for it, but I'm glad that Gaethje was able to stay on the card because I do think he adds a lot of value. And
somehow he opens up as an underdog, and somehow he's still the underdog. That's the part that shocks me the most. I mean, it was weird enough that he opened up as an underdog, but sometimes we see, just like we did with Pereira and Ankalaev. Granted, I don't think there's a wrong answer to the Pereira-Ankalaev odds. I think slight favorite to whoever is fair enough. But this one seems a little odd, just because obviously we talked about Fiziev hasn't fought since September 2023, coming off of an ACL injury. I know he's been at the gym, but he's on a 2-fight losing. It's weird. I don't know. I'm trying to think the logic behind Fiziev being a favorite, but maybe in a couple of hours we'll find out. But based off of what we know, probably one of the strangest lines I've seen in a very long time.
I agree. I am shocked that Justin Gaethje enters this fight as the underdog. First of all, it's not like, okay, I understand Justin Gaethje got knocked out by Max Holloway pretty bad a year ago at UFC 300. Okay, fine. But like these two guys have fought. We know what these two guys look like fighting. They haven't changed a ton, or at least shown us that they changed a ton since. They more or less, at least from the evidence that we have remained about the same. And on top of that, Fiziev enters on a 2-fight losing streak off a major injury, which is a torn ACL, and that can change careers. And he hasn't fought since September 2023, I believe. And he took this fight on short notice, and Gaethje had a full camp. Is this going to be 5 rounds, by the way?
I believe it's 3. That's the question that's been popping up. I believe it's 3. Yeah.
Yeah, that to me makes absolutely no sense. Like Justin Gaethje at plus money, again, you don't even have to get into like specifics or like Justin Gaethje 3rd round knockout or Justin Gaethje knockout or whatever, or decision. Just throw him on the money line. Plus 130. I think that's great. And Fiziev, again, like he already lost to Gaethje. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, coming off a major surgery, short notice. Like he's got way more things stacked against them than Gaethje does. And again, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't have these concerns, because we've seen Justin Gaethje come out on top before after suffering a bad knockout. But I think people can rest a little bit easy in that. And the fact that we've seen Gaethje get knocked out pretty bad before and bounce back quite strongly and continue to win. That's not to say that that's what's going to happen on Saturday, but sometimes when you get that really bad first knockout, you go, oh man, is it going to change not only the physical aspect of the fighter, where they're more prone to knockout physically, but is it going to change him mentally? Is he going to second guess himself? Is he not going to be himself fighting in there because, he doesn't want to get knocked out, or that ghost is still sticking around? We've seen Gaethje being like, fuck it. If I get knocked out, I get knocked out. Again, every fight is a car crash. So, I think this is a crazy ass line. This is ridiculous.
And yeah, look, I mean, Gaethje going into this fight I found it crazy that he said he fought reserved against Michael Chandler when this was like one of the fight of the year and whatnot. And he said he fought reserved against Rafael Fiziev and how he's going to bring back his WSOF days. Fiziev, on the other hand, was like, he got too wrapped up with the crowd and swayed away from his game plan. So hearing Fiziev say that and Gaethje kind of say an opposite thing, how do you feel like this fight will play out?
I think it's going to go to a decision. I think there's going to be a lot of damage. I think there's going to be a lot of nice, fun exchanges. I think both fighters are going to have fun in there. You're going to see them kind of shaking hands and all that in the middle of the octagon. It's going to be a back and forth. But I do think that Gaethje is the more powerful fighter. I do think that when he wants to fight technical, he can, or when he needs to fight technical, he will. I think after fighting Holloway, and I know he says he's going to bring back the WSO World Series of Fighting style again. Like I do think he means that, and he's going to be coming forward and looking to do damage. But I think part of his coaching staff will kind of reel him in and try to keep him a little bit contained and a little bit technical, even though still aggressive. So I think Gaethje is going to take this by decision. I don't see him getting stopped by Fiziev. I'd be surprised. And if he does, I think now we are talking about sort of a bigger conversation about his career in general, because he has taken a ton of damage. But I think he wins. I think he wins the decision here. So
Gaethje by decision is plus 350. Some individual odds, other ones, plus 325 by knockout, plus 2200 by submission. And then we've got Fiziev by decision plus 200, Fiziev by submission plus 1600, and then Fiziev by knockout at plus 200. So you like Gaethje by decision at plus 350?
Oh yeah, I love that line. Some apps let you do like some betting houses will let you pick two results. So it could be decision or knockout, or decision or submission, or knockout or submission. I would do knockout or decision.
Or decision.
Be on the safe side. I don't know if there's a line for that on MGM.
Not that I see one here, but did you watch, like, I'm sure you've watched the first fight, but you recently rewatched the first fight. I remember I was there in London, and it's always hard when you're there. I was a little surprised when Gaethje got his hand raised when I was there. When I rewatched it, I kind of understood him getting his hand raised. How about you? It was a super close fight, but who did you have winning the first fight?
I haven't rewatched it, but I remember in real time, I thought, it was a close fight, but I thought Gaethje had done enough.
Yeah, I mean, the damage obviously on Fiziev's face, that helps definitely. But it was a great fight, very technical fight regardless. Good. But implications here, this is a weird one for Justin Gaethje, because I feel like a loss sets him back big time, considering he's 36. He was knocked out badly by Max Holloway. Losing against Fiziev, put the odds aside because I feel like they make no sense. But on paper, I feel like everyone outside of the odds believes that Gaethje should win this fight. It seems like a loss sets him back big time. Now, a win, considering that Islam Makhachev is looking for new blood, some people are saying it wouldn't be crazy if he gets a title shot. So it's kind of weird how
that is
different.
Crazy. That is crazy if he gets a title shot. off of the win, that is insane.
No, I agree 100%. But I'm just saying the fact that people have even he mentioned it. He said, like on Fresh Blood.
They don't know what they're talking about.
Don't listen to Justin Gaethje himself either. But yeah, I mean,
the fighter's always going to vouch for himself. So,
True. No, I agree.
Anyone outside of Justin Gaethje and his team saying that he deserves a title shot out of beating a Fiziev that hasn't fought in a year and a half and is coming off 2 defeats and took the fight on short notice, and then he deserves a title shot, or a guy like Ilia Topuria, or a guy like Oliveira, Sarukian, even though he's kind of seems like blacklisted for the moment. Like, no, I'd be shocked if he were to get a title shot.
100% agree. I'm not saying that's the direction I would go. But looking at the landscape at 155, and we don't know, Topuria teased something that's going to shock it. Even his brother tweeted it as well. Something tells me it might not even be fight related. I don't know. What do you feel like Topuria is talking about?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Topuria, maybe like a big sponsorship. He does own a fight promotion in Spain that I believe they're having an event either tonight or something like that. A Colombian's fighting in the main event, FYI. But who's actually a fan of Lemos MMA and DM'd me like years ago when I've been asking me to bring him back, to like bring him on the channel. He has yet to I've yet to interview him, but yeah, all of a sudden he's in the main event of Way of Warrior, which is owned by Ilia Topuria. But anyways, I have no idea what's going on with Ilia Topuria. I do think that he is in conversations with Makhachev. I think they want to see how some things play out, because they do need a big fight for international fight week, right? And I think if they can lock in Jones versus Aspinall or Jones versus Pereira, and Pereira would be more than happy to have a quick turnaround. We know how that guy is always trying to fight. I think that kind of takes some power out of the negotiation of Topuria, and maybe they can, go with a top contender or whatever. But if they're not able to lock in one of those heavyweight title defense, one of those big fights that we mentioned, whether it's against Pereira or Aspinall, I do think they're going to have to do the next best thing, which I do think it's Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria. So we'll see. Again, a ton riding on this fight. This light heavyweight fight has consequences at both featherweight and heavyweight, as silly as that sounds, but it's true.
Yeah. No, look, at the end of the day, like, Islam Makhachev is looking for new blood. I agree with you. I don't think a Gaethje win is enough. I think they should have just rebooked the Arman fight, but it seems like UFC.
Same. Yeah. But, if you get injured and you don't fight, like,
back of the line.
Yeah. Not fair, but the UFC likes their fighters to honor their contract.
Well, another fun lightweight matchup that's taking place right before the co-main event is Ignacio Bahamondes and Jalen Turner. Obviously, high billing on this fight. Yeah. I feel like I wouldn't even call it a sleeper fight. Actually, maybe sleeper fight of the night with Gaethje and Fiziev around. But
this is the best fight on the card outside of the main event, by far.
All right, well, I'll give you the floor. Host of Lemos MMA. Obviously, I know you've probably covered Ignacio Bahamondes and spoken to him on multiple occasions. How much stock are you buying into Ignacio Bahamondes? Because it seems like the UFC is.
A ton. This was one of the guys that I actually was aware of him outside of the UFC before he went on Contender and all that. Ignacio has been making waves outside of the UFC for quite some time, and he's clearly looked like elite for a while. Now, he's had some issues, right? Like there's been a little bit of inactivity in the past, and then he's been defeated, I believe, twice in the UFC to John McDessie and what's this guy with the K?
Ludovic Klein.
Ludovic Klein. But like, this guy has tons of promise. Like, this guy is a true professional. He doesn't drink, he doesn't party. He just trains his ass off all the time. He is huge for lightweight. I think he's like 6'3". He knows how to use his height, his range. Very skilled, can kick, very complex system of kicking that he has. He has good precision. He's a tough kid. And he's training with Belal Muhammad, who is the UFC welterweight champion. And not only is he like, he's not just somebody part of his team. He's like a good friend of his, and like somebody that trains with him on a daily basis. Like, he was a big part of the camp for the title winning camp that Belal had against Leon Edwards. He's one of his main training partners, and like, training with the champion, the UFC welterweight champion, like, that has to rub off. Like, that has to give him a lot of confidence. That has to give him a lot of skills. And I do think this guy's going to be in the rankings, and I do think at some point he's going to be the face of one of the faces of the top 5 of the lightweight division, like Poirier, Gaethje, Chandler, Oliveira. All these guys are already in their late 30s, and in the next year or two, we're going to see them retire. And those spaces are going to get filled with new names, and I think Bahamondes is going to be one of them. The guy's super exciting, knockout artist. He's tough, good kid. People love him. Like, go look at it like a UFC Espanol post. People absolutely love this guy. I think he's on to big things, and I do think that this is his coming out party.
Well, that's high praise for Bahamondes there. -135 favorite over a +110 Jalen Turner. I'm assuming based off of what you said, you're picking Bahamondes. Are you going knockout, decision? What do you see?
I think decision. I think Jalen Turner is really tough. I think he's faced a lot of tough guys that have a difficulty putting him away. I think Bahamondes does have a chance at maybe catching him with something and maybe getting a TKO. Maybe he doesn't fully recover and the ref steps in there to kind of save him from damage. But I think that's not the likeliest outcome. I do think this is going to be an all-out war, and I do think this is going to win fight of the night. And I like Bahamondes by decision. Now, although I'm picking Bahamondes by decision, I don't love these lines exactly because he is an underdog. And I do think that Jalen Turner is a live he's a favorite, and I do think that Jalen Turner is a live underdog. Like, if we're just looking at value base, I don't think it's a crazy idea to sprinkle some money on Jalen Turner because I can see him winning this fight. And me trying to be as objective as possible. Obviously, like, I've interviewed Bahamondes plenty of times, and on that end, like, I'm pretty close to him. But trying to be as objective as possible, I think the most likely outcome is a decision and probably Bahamondes, but don't be surprised if it's something really close and it's like split and it goes to Jalen Turner. I think that's in the cards as well. But what a great fight. I think this is just are these the two tallest guys at lightweight? Where's Mike Bong when you need him with the stats? They have to be, right?
Two of the tallest, at least. I believe Turner is listed at 6'3" and Bahamondes is 6'1". But why do I feel like Bahamondes is taller than 6'1"?
Yeah,
regardless.
Well, he entered quite young into the UFC. I mean, he's been fighting in the UFC since 2021. So we're almost creeping up here to 4 years. He's 27, so he entered at 23. Maybe he hit a little bit of a growth spurt, maybe like a little late bloomer. I don't know. But he does seem taller than 6'1".
Yeah, well, he's +275 by decision for Bahamondes, and Turner by decision would be +550. Turner by decision. Interesting.
Yeah. I like that.
But a great fight, like you said, nonetheless. Off camera, we spoke a little bit about Amanda Lemos and Yasmin Lucindo. I want you to
I love it.
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead.
No, ask me something.
Okay. Well, obviously, maybe a changing of the guard. Yeah, no, I don't mind you rambling. Maybe a changing of the guard is what it appears to be on paper, right? Lemos, former title challenger, but getting up there in age, lost 2 of her past 3, got submitted by Virna Jandiroba, and obviously Yasmin Lucindo on a different career trajectory, on the rise. And this is a big fight for her, a big step up in competition. So obviously the UFC sees something in her. So,
yeah, no, Lucindo is super badass. This is the biggest fight of her career. They want to see where she's at. Like, is she a title contender or not? Because she's clearly good. She clearly belongs in the rankings. Like, she's certainly among the best top 15 ladies at 115 pounds. But can she make that next step? Is she ready to be considered a title contender and all of a sudden be in these big fights? And maybe in the near future, I don't know, towards the end of 2025 or something, be able to challenge for a title. I think that's kind of what the UFC wants to find out. Dude, she's just 23 years old. She was born in 2002. I believe she debuted at 20 years old. She debuted against on short notice against Jasmine Jauregui in 2022. And in that fight, that's when I go, damn, she lost, but her striking was so good. She didn't really, we see sometimes a lot of like newcomers let the moment get to them and kind of, be a little gun shy and all that. Nah, she was firing, she was scrapping, she was swinging. And yeah, she took an L, but since she's got 4 straight wins and we've seen improvement, and she's so young, 23 years of age, she can kick, she can box as well. Tons of volume, great power, crazy chin. I mean, she is a solid fighter. And I think this is going to be a very fun fight. And I think she should be a much higher favorite than she currently is on the lines. What is she at on MGM?
-140 favorite, +115 for.
Yeah, I think you take that. Look, Lemos again, 1-2 in her past 3 performances. 37 years of age. She has shown in previous fights to be prone to gassing. She does carry power. She is a very strong lady, but she doesn't have a lot of volume and she gasses. I do think this is going to be a fight that is going to start very even, but as the fight progresses, Lucindo's going to keep her pace and we're going to see Lemos fade and that's what we're gonna see her take over and I believe get a dominant decision win, if not a late stoppage.
Well, let's look at Lucindo by decision, plus 125. Knockout would be, wait, what? Plus 1100? Am I reading that right? That can't be.
For knockout? Lucindo?
Yeah.
No, that can't be true. Let me see. I'm checking on a different app that I will not name on this preview show, but
that's what it says.
I am limited to other.
It says plus 1100.
Oh, that is insane.
Buy a house?
Insane. Plus, you gotta throw something on that. Plus 1600 on some other app that I have at this point in time. I mean, let's look at a record real quick. Let's do this live right now.
I guess we have four KO/TKO victories on her resume.
Lucindo has 8.
8? Oh, okay.
8 knockout TKO victories. Means 47% of her wins have come by finish. In terms of TKO, not submission.
Yeah.
And how many submission wins does she have? Only 3. So it's either she's gonna win by decision or she's gonna win by knockout. And if you get knockout at what is it, plus 1600 on my no-named site and on BetMGM, what is it?
Plus 1100.
Oh yeah, you gotta throw something on there. Yeah, she hasn't knocked anybody out in the UFC, to be fair. All her knockouts came outside of the UFC, but shit. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I guess it's because Lemos has only been stopped once by Leslie Smith. I believe that was
Leslie. That was probably at a heavier weight class, huh?
Yeah.
135, you think? Because Leslie never fought at 125.
Let me
try.
That was bad. Yes, bantamweight.
Yeah, bantamweight. Yeah, that does make sense. I don't know, plus 16, plus 1200, whatever the hell. Like, I think that's worth it. But I think Lucindo's winning this fight. I have a ton of faith on this fighter, even more so than the next fight, which there's a lot bigger discrepancy odds-wise between the two in the following fight. And look at me just pitching you this beautiful transition onto our next fight.
Mauricio Rufy and King Green. Rufy is a minus 525 favorite over Green, who's plus 390. Obviously, a lot of hype. Fighting nerds in general, that whole team's kind of been on fire. We just saw John Silva go a little bit crazy in the press conference with Bryce Mitchell, but obviously they're riding a high, a lot of momentum. 2-0 in the UFC for Mauricio. This is obviously a fun, kind of like a perfect fight to catapult him a step forward, right? Because King Green is not ranked, but he's very popular and people tune in, and it's a fun, he's going to stand and bang. Do you think the odds are fair? Do you think he should be that big of a favorite?
No. And I think this is a little bit of what happened to Peyton Talbot. Now, there are some differences, but like when you get a prospect that's like looking that good and looking that flashy, and people really get behind them and they really blow up the lines to a point that like they shouldn't be the way that they are. Now, keep in mind that Mauricio's not entering the fight here as like a minus 1600, but still, like, I'm not too confident. I like on my staff picks for MMA Junkie, I did pick him to win. Like, gun to my head, if my life depended on it, I'm putting my money on the Brazilian. But in his last fight against James Jontop, which is a very tough Peruvian kid that's no longer in the UFC, he gassed. And that guy took the fight on short notice. That guy took his best shots. And towards the end of the fight, he was coming back. And this was a guy that like wasn't ready to fight, but he took it literally on fight week. And look, he's no longer in the UFC. All respect to that camp of Ioan Iberico and his brother that have, taken out many top quality fighters such as Enrique Barzola, Claudio Puelles, and have brought many Peruvians to the UFC. But I do think that King Green is a higher quality fighter than John Top. King Green has better striking, maybe doesn't have as much of a chin as John Top because of the youth and the damage factors is not there for John Top. But look, if Mauricio Rufy kind of pulls off a Michel Pereira and looks flashy and does a bunch of acrobatic stuff and gasses out in the third, man, having Bobby Green, who's still a very mean fighter and a very capable fighter, that dude can still knock people out. in front of you with 5 minutes remaining, like that's trouble. Rufy got lucky that Juntop didn't have that type of offense, but King Green does. So I would stay away from this fight betting wise. I don't think it makes any sense in the world to put any money on either side. I'm not confident that Green's going to win because he has clearly slowed down. We saw him against Jalen Turner, like the discrepancy of speed. It was huge. His chin and his damage threshold is no longer there. But like these crafty veterans and these salty dogs, like Green can get mean still at whatever old he is. I think he's like 38 or something. It wouldn't shock me like completely if he were to pull off the upset and put a beating on Mauricio Rufy. So again, with these guys that are very flamboyant and their style is very crazy and they sometimes prioritize too much the entertainment and the flashiness over just straight up winning, I get a little scared. So I'm picking Mauricio, but I'm not too confident in the pick.
Yeah, because it's a question of how does he handle the adversity if he can't get King Green out of there. And looking at the odds, -140 for Mauricio by knockout, which seems to suggest that this is going to be a quick finish for him, right? When you see such favorable odds for someone to win by knockout, it's not usually, oh, they're going to get it in the third round. It's going to be a quick knockout. And Green's past 2 losses to Patty and Jalen were in the first round. But I guess the question is here, if he doesn't get King Green out of there early, what's his confidence going to be like as the fight goes? Right. And like you said, Top is not King Green. There's obviously an experience and skill level between the two, granted his toughness. So, yeah, I did pick Rufy. I admit I tend to get swayed by hype and prospects unless I have high belief in the opposition. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. When I'm making picks, I tend to get lured into it unless, like I said, they're fighting somebody that I happen to just be so confident in. And King Green, it's tough to know what kind of version you're going to get of him. Right?
It is. And yeah, like again, I'm not. What I'm saying is that I'm not here trying to convert people to like vouch or pick Green in winning this. Again, I got Mauricio Rufy, but I'm just saying I'm not very confident in this pick. And even in totality, like out of all the fighting nerds out there, I think he's the one that I have most questions about, like the more questions about. Like the other guys are very solid in terms of like where they're going. Rufy, I'm still kind of gauging to see like, is he kind of like a Michel Pereira, like good and flashy, but has a ceiling, or is there more to this guy? I don't know. And because I'm not confident and because I don't have that, well, I am confident in general, like me. I'm just saying I'm not confident in the pick. But because I'm not confident in the pick and I don't really know where he's at in his career, I'm staying away from this. In terms, like I would advise people to stay away from this betting wise.
Yeah, because the odds for Green, like Green by knockout, is +1,000. So that just goes to show you how little belief the odds have in Green pulling out. Because even Green by decision, is that crazy to think about? The speed, I think the first minute or so is going to be very telling of how this fight is going to play out, because of
Green
the speed.
has slowed down a ton. And it's very bad for his style because he fights like this, right? Like he does that little thing, like kind of Mayweather, that peekaboo style or whatever it's called. And if you don't have the speed, man, that's going to be rough to pull off. And we saw that against Jalen Turner.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the kind of matchup that's making people think that this was going to go similar. Granted, Turner is such a good striker. He's super slick, hence why I'm also so excited about the Ignacio Bahamondes fight. But let's round up with this before we log out. I always like to ask you this. Who is your 2 performance? Not that it always goes like that, but who are your 2 performance of the night bonuses and who's your fight of the night?
So I'm going to go Alex Pereira, performance of the night, because he's going to get a knockout. I'm going to go fight of the night with Turner Bahamondes. And the other performance of the night bonus, I know I just talk a bunch of shit about this guy.
I was about to say.
Mauricio Rufy, most likely he's going to do something crazy and get the knockout, right? But like, I'm just saying, like, watch out, guys. I'm just trying to protect your pockets, but probably him. And yeah. Yeah,
because if he wins, he's going to make it look pretty spectacular, right? That's where you're going with it. Yeah, that's the thing. Well, there you have it, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget, we've got Ken Hathaway and Mike Bond on site. The entire MMA Junkie team will have you covered with results, recaps, all that good stuff. And don't forget, Georgian Goes are going to have a watch along. It starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. Jump on, have some fun with them. So thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy the fights, and we'll see you for the next pay-per-view.